because find the love. Don't talk while I'm talking. All of that good stuff that Miss Woodruff loves to say in class. I miss you guys so much. But let's get into this Hamlet. Oh my goodness, y'all. We are in Act 5. This is the final act of the play. And actually, what Shakespeare does in Act 5 is he breaks it into two pieces. We have a scene 1, and then there's this big, fat, humongous scene 2. And we're going to work on scene 1 this week or today. And then on next week, we'll finish it up with scene 2. And also, just for time's sake and just to not kill your brains all the way, we are going to skip a little bit in Act 1. So just follow along. I'll read it to you and explain it to you. So this is Act 5, Scene 1. I'm going to do the scene preview for you. So this longer scene begins with a couple of gravediggers, referred to as clowns in the text, discussing the burial of Ophelia. They seem to disagree with Ophelia receiving a full Christian burial, even though she may have planned to drown herself and therefore committed suicide. A death by suicide is considered by many as a terrible, even unforgivable sin. Their conversation ends on a more lighthearted note and adds much needed comic relief to the beginning of this very serious act. Hamlet and Horatio approach these men, and they all discuss some of the found bones in the cemetery. This particular scene has also become the subject of several works of art, and it is believed that Hamlet holding a skull in this conversation was the source of the skull in hand pose countless actors have taken when delivering Hamlet's famous to be or not to be soliloquy. So nowadays when this play is performed, they have Hamlet holding a skull when he's saying to be or not to be, but when the play was originally performed, Hamlet probably picked up a skull during this part of the play. While these men are speaking, Ophelia's funeral procession arrives at the cemetery. Laertes is mourning his sister in a way that many would argue is overly dramatic. In fact, he even jumps in the grave with her coffin for a moment. Hamlet does not first know who the procession is laying to rest, but Laertes' behavior causes Hamlet to realize that Ophelia is dead. When Hamlet approaches the group of mourners, he and Laertes instantly begin fighting with one another. The two are pulled apart and the scene ends as Horatio leaves. So words to watch. Clowner, the person who prepares a dead body for burial. Wittingly, knowingly, or done on purpose. Argyle, therefore, because of this, or ergo. Nil, unwilling or not wanting to do something. Countenance, someone's face or someone's disposition. Spade is a shovel. Bore arms, use weapons or use tools. Heathen, someone who is not knowledgeable about the issues relating to God. Gallows, a device used to hang someone to death. Tenants, people who live in a place. Cudgel, a club or beat. To club or beat. Stoop, bottle. Daintier, graceful or pretty. Cain, the biblical son of Adam and Eve, he kills his brother. Courtier, someone who works directly for the royal family. Pickaxe, just an axe. Shrouding sheet, the sheet put over a dead body. Quiddities, the aspect of something that truly makes it what it is. Quibble, arguments. Tenures, time served in a position. Sconce, a candlestick that is usually attached to a wall. Recoveries, a rebuttal or an argument attacking another point. Pate, head. Jot, word or scribble. Parchment, paper. Assurance, in this meaning, comfort. The age has grown so pricked. People have become so careful. Y'all. He galls his kibe. He is so intent on completing this task that he has caused himself to have red and painful swollen areas on his feet, hands, etc. that are caused by being exposed to cold. Sexton, the person who takes care of a church grounds. Usually this person rings the church bells too. Heir, before. Tanner, someone who works with or makes leather. Flagon, a bottle or jug. Jester, a clown. Infinite, limitless, going on forever. Abhorred, hated. Gore, throat. Oft, often. Gibs or gibes, insults. Gambles, running jumps that express great joy. Smelt, in this meaning, decayed. Bunghole, a spout for emptying something, a hole that you use to fill something. Thither, there. Modesty, not being cocky or showing humility. Converted to, changed into. Awe, being very impressed. Expel, to get rid of. But soft a while. Be quiet. Corse, a corpse or a dead body. Maimed rites, poorly done funeral rites, or the prayers and scriptures performed by a priest for the dead. Obsequies, funeral rites. Unsanctified been lodged, the unholy has been living. Krantz, long ropes of plants or vines. Requiem, a special religious ceremony for the dead. Churlish, rude. When thou liest howling, when you are being tormented in hell. Strewed, thrown over something else. Oh, trouble woe. Oh, highest sadness. Grappling, physically fighting. Asunder, split in two pieces. Theme, and this meaning the purpose or meaning. Forbear, to be patient. Easel, vinegar or old bitter wine. Outface, staring someone down or confronting. Prate, talking on and on. Wart, a small bump. Anon, soon. And then finally, proceeding, things done before something else. So like I said, just for time's sake and to save your brains, we are going to skip the first part of Act 5. I'll just explain to you what happens. The first couple pages here, well actually it's maybe like the first 3 or 4 pages, we don't see any of the normal characters. We only have 2 guys who are grave diggers. And literally they're just digging a grave. And more than likely they're digging one of the graves, they have already dug the grave that's going to be used for Ophelia. Now, instead of them being called grave diggers, you're going to notice in the play they're called clowns because they joke. All they do is tell all kinds of jokes. For example, one of the jokes that they say is that, man, who do you think whose body stays better in the ground? And they say, you know what, I think people who work with leather, those tanners, because their skin's already all tanned up and hardened so they don't decompose as fast. Ha 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 ha. And they make all kind of jokes like that. And at this time period, bodies didn't go inside of a full casket that was made of metal. They were wooden. They weren't put inside of what nowadays we call a tomb, which is like a cement surrounding that goes around the coffin. The bodies went in, and so when the decomposition started, when you're digging into a grave, you might just run into another dead body. And these guys actually, while they're digging and making all these terrible jokes, they actually hit dead bodies, other dead bodies that have been in the ground that have since decomposed to nothing but skeletons. And they jokingly, carelessly throw around these body parts. And so it's supposed to be funny, even though it is really probably not something that should be funny. But they're going along, cracking jokes, digging this grave, pulling up random skulls and legs and whatever, cracking these jokes. And while they're doing that, in walks in Hamlet and Horatio. And like I said, Horatio proves to be Hamlet's true friend. And if you remember at the end of Act 4, Hamlet has said, Horatio, I need to talk to you as soon as possible. And so apparently these guys have met up and they're talking, they're catching up. Now while they're talking, while they're walking along, they start talking to the gravediggers, and the gravediggers actually pulls up a skull. And Hamlet, in a very odd act that I would not do, actually picks up the skull and touches it. And the Hamlet holding the skull scene is more than likely what people got the inspiration for Hamlet holding the skull when he does the to be or not to be. He doesn't hold the skull according to Shakespeare's original play then, he actually holds it now. And in the course of looking at the skull and this, that, and the other, the gravediggers reveal that based on where the skull was buried and based on the decomposition of the skull, Hamlet's actually holding the skull of someone he knows. The skull belonged to the court jester. So there was a guy who was hired by the king and queen to entertain people, crack jokes, be silly and goofy. And apparently this was the jester that was in the palace when Hamlet was a child. And like I said, in a very odd, strange thing to do, Hamlet's actually holding the skull of someone he knew. He's holding the skull of the court jester that entertained him when he was a little boy. And while holding that skull, Hamlet basically contemplates the meaning of life. You can be a great, mighty, awesome person. I believe he refers to Alexander the Great. And you can be just a regular old person who lived on the street. Or you can be a court jester for the king and queen and the royal family themselves. But every single one of us, every single human being is going to come to the same point. They're all going to turn into dust or a decomposing skull. And so he and Horatio have this deep philosophical moment while he's holding the skull, ew, 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 and the clowns continue making jokes. And while they're in the midst of having this conversation, in walks in a funeral procession. Now, we as the audience, we know that Ophelia has passed away. She's drowned. Remember, she was climbing out on a branch to get something. The branch breaks. Ophelia falls into the water, and she's so completely out of it, she doesn't get out of the water and save herself. She actually drowns. And there is a lot of debate as to whether this death would be considered a terrible accident or was it a suicide. And Hamlet doesn't know that this has happened, though. And so he's not quite sure who the procession is for, but he sees people in the procession that he doesn't like. So he and Horatio hide. They kind of go off to the side. They're going to be nosy. They're going to spy on them. And actually, that's where we're going to start reading. So in the play itself, we're on page 119. And I'm going to go kind of toward the bottom where it says enter king, queen, blah, 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 blah. Basically, they're walking through the cemetery going to where Ophelia's body is going to be buried. So enter the king, queen, Laertes, the corpse, of course, with the doctor of divinity as priest, the lords, and the attendants. And so Hamlet is speaking here. He's like, I wonder whose funeral this is. He says, who is this thy follow? And with such maimed rites, this doth betoken the course they follow did with desperate hand fordo it own life. 'Twas some ecstatic couch we a while and mark. So Hamlet says, man, there's a funeral procession coming, let's go hide. And then Hamlet notes that the priest who is doing the burial rites or saying the prayers is not doing a very good job. He calls them maimed rites. So he's kind of saying the prayer kind of ugly, he's not really enthusiastic. And Hamlet says the only reason a priest could be saying the funeral rites this terribly is if this person took their own life. So if you commit suicide, in a lot of religions, a lot of people see that as an unforgivable sin. It's something that you can't repent of, because if you do it, there's no chance for you to say, oh my goodness, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that. You can't repent. You die in your sin. And so there are a lot of people who believe that if you commit suicide, you instantly go to hell. And so this priest who is walking with Ophelia's body probably feels conflicted. Should he be doing this proper burial for someone who might have committed suicide? Is this wrong? But it's for the royal family's request, so he can't really tell them no. But you can tell he's not super enthusiastic about performing this funeral. Okay, so retires with Horatio. Horatio and him hide. Okay, so Laertes is not enjoying this not so great funeral. He wants his sister to have the best of the best, and he, just like Hamlet, can pick up on the fact that the priest is not doing a really good job. So Laertes says, what ceremony else? Hamlet says, that is Laertes, a very noble youth. Mark. And in this case, mark means listen or pay attention. What ceremony else? Okay, now here it says doctor, but once again, remember that's the priest. Her obsequies have been as far enlarged as we have warranty. Her death was doubtful, and but that great command oversways the order, she should in ground unsanctified be lodged to the last trumpet. For charitable prayers, shards, flints, and pebbles should be thrown at her. Yet here she is allowed her virgin krantz, her maid instruments, and bringing home of bell and burial. So Laertes is mad at the priest. He says, do some other cool stuff for her funeral. My goodness, she needs the full ceremony. Here the priest says, with all due respect, she died under some questionable circumstances. I've probably given her more than what she really deserved. So he's saying she really shouldn't be buried with these funeral rites that she's received. Maybe she shouldn't even be buried where she's located. I've already kind of overstepped my bounds. Okay, Laertes is not trying to hear that. Must there be no more done? No more be done. We should profane the service of the dead to sing a requiem and such rest to her as to the peace parted souls. So Laertes says, but are you sure you can't do anything else? And the priest says, no, I've already kind of stepped a little bit too far, but I can't give her a proper requiem as I would for someone who actually died under better circumstances. So Laertes, he's completely overwhelmed. It's almost like she's dying all over again because she's not being treated to a proper burial. He says, lay her in the earth, and from her fair and unpolluted flesh may violets spring. I tell thee, churlish priest, a ministering angel shall my sister be when thou liest howling. Okay, now here Laertes says something very disrespectful. He says, fine, that's all you're going to do it. Put her in the ground. And when she is in heaven enjoying paradise, you are going to be rolling around in hell. Whoa, that's a terrible thing to say to a priest. But Laertes is very, very upset. So now Hamlet is thinking, wait. Now he realizes who the funeral is for. It's for Ophelia. Now Hamlet has been terrible to Ophelia throughout this play, when really Ophelia has done nothing but be kind and loving to him. And in my opinion, it kind of bothers me that he treated her the way that he did. But here we're going to see that Hamlet actually probably really did have feelings for Ophelia. He just didn't treat her very well. So he says, what? The fair Ophelia? And then the queen says, sweets to the sweet, farewell. And so she scatters flowers. You can see her putting them over Ophelia's coffin as she's being laid in the ground. I hope thou shouldst have been my Hamlet's wife. I thought thy bride bed to have decked sweet maid, and not have strewn thy grave. So she says, I would have rather sprinkled these flowers over your wedding bed, and not over your body in the ground. Okay, and Laertes, just overcome with grief, here he's going to cry out for his sister. He says, oh, trouble, woe, fall 10 times trouble on that cursed head, whose wicked deed thy most ingenious sense deprived thee of. Hold off the earth a while, till I have caught her once more in mine arms. So here, Laertes is so upset and he's so mad, and he even references Hamlet, like, golly, that stupid Hamlet made you go crazy. And you can imagine they've lowered her body into the ground and they're about to start putting dust over her, or putting the dirt back over her. And he says, wait. He actually jumps into the grave and he's going to pick her body up and hold it up against himself because he's just very upset. So he leaps into the grave. Now pile your dust upon the quick and dead, till of this flat mountain you have made. He says, now bury me, the quick, the living, and the dead. Bury us both in here. I'm so upset. I'm just going to go on the ground with my sister. To overtop old Pelion, or sky's head of blue Olympus. Now this is interesting. Laertes is in Ophelia's grave. He's holding her dead body. He's screaming with sadness. And out pops Hamlet. When Hamlet realizes Ophelia's dead, he's so upset he actually reveals himself. Now, of course, Laertes is super mad at Hamlet and does not want to see him, so this doesn't go well, obviously. So Hamlet coming forward. What is he whose grief bears such an emphasis, whose phrase of sorrow conjures the wandering stars and makes them stand, live wonder wounded hearers? This is I, Hamlet, the Dane. Now, Hamlet comes forward and says that he is completely devastated to find out that Ophelia's dead. Now, his behavior throughout the play has not shown that, but here, all of a sudden, he cares about Ophelia. Okay, now, hearing Hamlet, Laertes, you can see him putting his sister's body back down, and he comes out the grave, and he is ready to fight. He says, "The devil take thy soul," grappling with him. So they actually start fighting each other. Full fist fight breaks out. They're throwing each other around. Okay, Hamlet's talking trash. He says, "Thou prayest not well. I prithee take thy fingers from my throat. For though I am not splentative and rash, yet have I in me something dangerous, which let thy wisdom fear. Hold off thy hand." Now here Hamlet says, "Look, I know you're upset. I know you're mad, but you might want to leave me alone, man, because if I really get to going, I can be something dangerous. I might hurt you really, really badly, Laertes. Leave me alone." He says, "Hold off thy hand." And so if you can imagine, now the king is like, break it up, break it up. And so people are like pulling them apart, the courtiers, the queen, this, that, and the other. Pluck them asunder. And the queen says, "Hamlet, Hamlet," because she's probably surprised to see Hamlet at this point. And everyone's like, "Gentlemen, calm down. Oh my goodness, it's a funeral. We don't need to fight at a funeral." Okay, Horatio says, "Good, my lord, be quiet." The attendants part them. "Why, I will fight with him upon this theme until my eyelids will no longer wag." "Oh, my son, what theme?" "I loved Ophelia. 40,000 brothers could not with all their quantity of love make up my sum. What wilt thou do for her?" Okay, so Hamlet says, "I really did love Ophelia. I actually loved her even more than you." Okay, that sounds like a really stupid argument to get into with someone's brother, but Hamlet decides to do it. I don't understand. And then also, Hamlet's behavior does not reflect the love that he supposedly had for Ophelia. So all of this is kind of ironic to me, but okay. The king says, "Look, Laertes, just let him talk. He's crazy." So the king says, "Oh, he is mad, Laertes. For love of God, forbear him." The queen also is pleading with Laertes. "Swoons, show me what thou wilt do. Woo, weep, woo, fight, woo, fast, woo, tear thyself, woo, drink up easel, eat a crocodile. I'll do it. Dost come here to whine?" So basically Hamlet says, no matter what form of mourning you pick, whether you cry, whether you scream, whether you injure yourself, I'll do all of it to prove that I loved Ophelia just as much or even more than you did. Once again, that's a strange kind of thing to say, but okay, whatever. "Dost come here to whine? To outface me with the leaping in her grave? Be buried quick with her, and so will I. And if thou prate of mountains, let them throw millions of acres on us, till our ground singeing his pate against the burning zone, make Ossa like a wart. Nay, and thou will with mouth, I'll rant as well as thou." So here Hamlet says, if you want to be buried with Ophelia, count me in too. Bury me, pour as much dirt on my head to create a mountain where her grave is. I'll go just as far as you in my sadness for her. Okay, so then the queen says, "This is mere madness, and thus a while the fit will work on him. Anon, as patient as the female dove, when that her golden couples are disclosed, his silence will sit drooping." So the queen is talking to Laertes saying, "Look, he's a little crazy. He's upset. Ophelia's gone. Just let him get it out." Okay, so Hamlet keeps going. "Hear you, sir. What is the reason that you use me thus? I loved you ever, but it is no matter. Let Hercules himself do what he may. The cat will mew, and the dog will have his day." And then Hamlet looks at Laertes and says, "Wait a minute. We used to be friends, Laertes. Why are you so angry at me?" Now that's a dumb question. Of course he's angry at you, Laertes. Of course he's angry. And then King Claudius comes in and says, "I pray thee, good Horatio, wait upon him." Exit Hamlet and Horatio. Okay, so Hamlet says, "Look, I don't know why you're so mad at me," which is a dumb question to ask. But at that note, he leaves. He says, "Hey, we'll have our chance. You'll have your chance to get at me. Every dog will have his day." And he decides to leave. Now, when he leaves, the king asks Horatio to follow after him. Basically, Hamlet's not behaving like himself. He's kind of a crazy person. They don't want him walking around unattended. And of course, Horatio, being a good friend, follows after Hamlet. Okay? Then the king, you can imagine him kind of pulling Laertes close to him, saying, "Look, I know you're mad, but just remember, We have our awesome murder plot going. You're going to have your chance to get your sweet, sweet revenge. Just be patient. So he turns to Laertes and he says, strengthen your patience in our last night's speech. We'll put the matter to the present push. Good Gertrude, set some watch over your son. This grave shall have a living monument. An hour of quiet shortly shall we see. Till then, in patience, our proceedings be. Okay, so he says, look, just wait, Laertes, calm down. We got our awesome murder plot coming. And with that, he says, look, be patient. We're going to see how things turn out. And then everyone leaves, and that is the end of scene 1.